everyone, welcome back to Crochet and Crime, where I crochet and I tell true crime stories. Today I'll be talking about Arthur Shawcross. This story is actually not talked about enough, and that honestly kind of upsets me because this story is absolutely crazy. So yeah, I would like to put out a quick disclaimer. This story does talk about like sexual assault and sexual abuse, and it does get kind of graphic about like the crime scenes and like it just gets way too descriptive. So if you don't like any of that, I suggest you click away from this video. And yeah, with that, let's get into it. At a young age, Arthur would experience multiple head injuries, from him being a clumsy kid to him purposefully bashing his head into things. He was also playing with fire, and he had a very love-hate relationship with his parents, and it went kind of both ways. His family moved up to New York, and in school he was very aggressive and socially awkward. And later on in some of his interviews, he explained he was sexually abused by his mother. He then went on to say in middle school he had sexual relations with his sister because at that time that's what he thought families did, and he didn't understand the concept of like not banging your siblings and stuff like that. A lot of his family members would come out and deny all of these claims and say that Arthur would lie a lot and come up with different stories, and that he had a very wild imagination. At the age of 19, Arthur enlisted in the U.S. Army, and that's when he was drafted out to Vietnam. And while he was there, he sexually assaulted and killed 2 young Vietnamese girls on a combat mission. No one knows if this is true or not because he also claimed to kill 39 people in the war, but then that turned out to be not true. And during his interviews, his stories were like never straight. It always like branched off into different stories or different versions of those stories. So you could never really get an honest answer out of this guy, it seems. After the army, Arthur would move on to get married a total of 4 times. All of them ended because of his anger issues, and he had kids with some of like his wives, but he never had like a full-on relationship with any of his children. And during his 3rd marriage, he abducted one of his neighbor's sons, and he lured the 10-year-old into the woods, suffocated him, and proceeded to sexually assault his corpse. Police asked around and Arthur's name was brought up, but after the police questioned him on it, they just dropped it completely. 4 months later, a 8-year-old girl's body would be found underneath a bridge, seemingly to have been sexually assaulted and murdered. The police asked around and Arthur's name was brought up yet again, and the police brought him in this time for questioning, and he confessed. So he was charged for the 10-year-old boy's murder, but that was dropped because of a plea bargain and the lack of evidence, even though he confessed to it. And then there was the 8-year-old girl's case, and that is when Arthur would be sentenced to 25 years in prison. Arthur ended up only serving 15 years, and he was released on good behavior. Arthur ended up moving to a different part of New York, but everybody knew him there and would publicly shame him, which, like, good for them. Arthur then whined to police officers that he wasn't welcome there and that he was being bullied. You know, how dare they hurt this man who killed innocent children? Like, oh my gosh, guys. Obviously, never do that. The absolute audacity. Anyways, the officers smuggled him into Rochester, New York, and sealed his criminal record so that no one could find out who he was or what he did, so he was living in peace. Arthur had a little girlfriend at the time, and their relationship was a bit rocky. Wonder why? So Arthur, our apparently innocent man, goes out and gets busy with some sex workers, but whoops! One of them died! How'd that happen? So, police found her floating in a river, you know, taking a little dead girl swim, you know? And a year later, another sex worker was found dead, and then a 59-year-old homeless woman was found dead. And then 6 days later, another sex worker died. They are dropping like flies, and no one suspected Arthur, the man who killed children. But then again, how could they suspect him when they could not see his record? Obviously, word gets out, and they label this killer as the Genesee River Killer. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's like Tennessee, right? Right? Genesee, Tennessee? We're gonna go with that. Anyways, police are trying to find this person because these sex workers are disappearing left and right. So they search up all of the residents, but they find nothing because Arthur's record was sealed. So more sex workers continue to disappear. So they ask the living sex workers if they have seen anyone who is like a regular that is acting a little bit suspicious, or who is like who's just really weird. And they gave off the name Mitch, which I guess didn't make a light bulb go off in the police officer's mind to start finding out who this Mitch guy was. They were pretty much like, huh, seems like a cool dude, and went on about their day. More dead sex workers wash up on the river, and one of them was actually reportedly last seen with that Mitch guy, so the police are finally like, okay, who the heck is this Mitch? So police find these pants floating in the river, and they see an ID of a woman in the pockets. So they're looking everywhere for this woman, thinking she was a victim, and so for a month they were looking for this woman, and they had helicopters, and they found a naked body, which wasn't the woman, but it was another sex worker who was in fact dead. And then the helicopters found a man standing on the bridge, and it was Arthur, and he was choking the chicken, you know? He was how do I say this without the video getting taken down? He was rolling the dice. You know what? Hopefully you're old enough to know what I'm talking about, and if not, then ask your parents. Don't ask your parents. Stay innocent. As you're watching a murder document. Jesus Christ, Dean, just continue. So the helicopter is watching Arthur, and lo and behold, he beelined towards the corpse and starts to like feel her up. And so the police stop him and take him in, and he admits to nearly everything. He admits to like the lady that they just saw him feeling up, but he doesn't admit to anything else. And then the police finally realize that this guy is Mitch, like the one that the workers were talking about. Clara, Arthur's girlfriend at the time, yeah, they were still together, was taken in for questioning as well. She had on this really nice piece of jewelry. It was like a necklace, and the police questioned her about it, and she told them that Arthur had gotten it for her, and the police were like, huh, that's very interesting. And that necklace actually belonged to one of his victims. And so the police tell Arthur, since his girlfriend was technically wearing a piece of evidence, that they were going to put her on trial as well. And so that freaks Arthur out, and so he confesses to every murder that has taken place. And the police are like, ha, gotcha. And they did find out that the officers sealed the records that he had, and like they didn't get in trouble. I never understood that. They never got in trouble. That was always so crazy to me. Why did they not get in trouble? Arthur then told the police that he would come back to the victims' bodies after weeks and would eat pieces of their skin from their private places, and he would get off to the taste or just like the rush from eating flesh. I could have just described it like that. Like, I could in the first place. Fucking Jesus Christ. Dean, your brain is humongous. Anyways, for the 10 victims, Arthur was sentenced to 250 years in prison, and in 2008 he complained about a pain in his leg which was, in his words, excruciating, and they then took him to the hospital where he would die of a cardiac arrest. I'm gonna finish this up and I'll be right back. Alright, here are the finished products. I was only able to make 3 granny squares today because I do not have the energy to make more. But yeah, today's case was super wild, capital S. And yeah, the story was super heartbreaking. I absolutely hate whenever children get hurt in cases. I mean, I hate whenever anybody gets hurt in any cases, but still, like, it's children, you know? But yeah. So I hope you enjoyed this story as much as I did. Make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe with all of your friends and with the demons in your closet. And yeah, I hope to see you guys next week. Bye!